proved my point that this is going to be the new normal.
Thank you so much for your kind words, sir. With this, I would request Dr. Manish Kumar. Sir, you'll have to put off your presentation.
Yeah, just a second.
Yeah.
Just give me a
And
minute.
may I request Dr. Manish Kumar to join us? Dr. Manish Kumar is the MD and CEO of National Skill Development Corporation. But before that, he has done his BTech from Dhanbad. Then he was in Indian Administrative Services for 11 years. He was in World Bank. Now he's in NSDC. There are so many other things which he has bagged, but not coming between you and Dr. Manish. Over to Dr. Manish Kumar. Sir, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. So very warm welcome and thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, it's a great pleasure to be joining, and I think this is a fantastic initiative. Yeah, I guess I've been listening to some of the talks, and it's really enjoyable. All that was being spoken. So I think from my side, you wanted me to give some inputs on how the skills could be integrated to education. So I'll keep myself to that.
Yes, sir.
I will probably lay out the broad thought process why skill is certainly so important, and its integration into education is also quite critical at this juncture of India's history. For that matter, actually, is globally important at this point. And also what all we are doing and what all we could do together along with other educationists who might be listening. So I'll share some of my thoughts. So firstly, I think one important thing to realize is the changing nature, excuse me, the changing nature of world which has occurred post internet. What we have realized is that internet as a very powerful transforming kind of technology has changed the way in which human civilization operates. And this we call the Industry 4.0, as many of you would have heard. Industry 2.0 is the one in which school education, or for that matter, education system in the world has normally functioned. Because that's about 100 years old when we had the whole concept of factory line coming in. And if you think of a typical car being manufactured, it just moves through a line, a factory line, and then keeps on getting added, improved at every stage. Eventually, it comes out as a full-fledged car, which is what a customer uses. And that was the same way in which we organized, if you look at our education system too, that you go from one grade to another, to another, to another, going upwards. And then when you come out, you come out with some broad knowledge of things. The economy at that point of time respects the knowledge that you've acquired. And then what it wants is that you come over and learn on the job, utilize the base knowledge that you have created to then generate more income for the society that you're serving. So that's the way it was organized. But if you look at what's happening now, the technology itself is changing exponentially with internet coming in and new kind of products that keeps on coming. Every 2 to 3 years, you find a sudden disruption of the old. And if you then therefore begin to think about an employer, his interest is not just about what you might know on the basics and fundamentals. He or she wants, the employer wants that you should come prepared with some basic skills that enables you to actually jumpstart the economy or continue with the economy rather than you learning, because by the time you learn, things change. So things change pretty fast, and therefore you have to be adaptable. And as the speaker before me was saying, that you have to continuously learn and relearn what you are doing. So new skills have to be acquired all the time. But even as you jump in, you must have enough skills by which the employer feels that your presence is going to benefit the company. So that's the way the employer looks at this. I think the need for skills, and the need for therefore embedding skills into the education system is paramount, and is happening actually globally. We have noticed this happening in some countries in a fairly deep way. For example, if you take the case of Finland, they have integrated skills into education right from primary education. I mean, right at that point, children get exposed to the world of the skills, which is building dexterity in their minds, and also then get academic inputs. So both of them happen together rather than separately. And the same kind of thing is something which we have observed in Sweden, in the models of Kunskapsskolan, which is being promoted by Manav Ratna University in India. And that is adapted to the Indian context, with skills as the main focus area. So we find models across the world, even in countries like US, where skills, incidentally, had taken a bit of back burner for a while. In the last 2-3 years, I've noticed that the agencies that dealt with skills have suddenly been revived, and that they have got a new life, and skills is being taught or being promoted in a much bigger way. So I think that's something which is happening in India too. And some of the interesting, I think, initiative which I noticed, and I see the promise of that, is what's happening in through the Ministry of HRD. So the programs that are there in schools, for example, I think there are about 11,000 schools, 11,434, as I remember correctly, covered by the vocationalization of education in schools program of the ministry. And together they touch the lives of almost 10 lakh students every year. And this is in class 9, 10, 11, and 12. There are almost 70 different job roles that are linked to the demands that are there in the market. So it could be related to retail, it could be related to IT, it could be related to logistics. So the different kinds of demands which are there in the market. So these job roles are linked to that. And assessment is being done by the local state board together with Sector Skill Council, which is supported by NSTC. So that's the kind of arrangement which has been built. And so that's a very positive one, because there was a review also done by the ministry of that. And some interesting insights which turned out was the satisfaction of parents. That my children actually is more confident. He seems to have learned quite a bit by getting into skilling, and he's become more social. He's become much more confident about himself. So I think that's the parent side. When it comes to the employer side, many of these guys go and they get into employment. They're very happy about the fact that the children who come with skills end up being more productive compared to someone who is totally unskilled and comes for the first time. Could therefore be a bit of risk to himself because he doesn't know enough about the soft floor, or could be a risk to someone else or to the company itself by spoiling some of the machinery and costly equipments. So therefore, they feel more comfortable with the skilled children, and they often say that, yeah, he is raw, he needs to learn more, but we prefer him or her compared to somebody who is totally unskilled. So I think this is good feedback from the employer too, as from the parents, and the children themselves more confident when they report about their own feeling having taken these kind of courses. So therefore, we do believe that this is a positive trend, and there should be need for more of it. As I mentioned, Manav Ratna is trying an interesting experiment along with government of Haryana in about 100 schools where they have promoted Kunskapsskolan model, which essentially implies that every child learns at his own pace, and therefore has to be given lessons which are not necessarily classroom driven in a very strict way, but gives him the opportunity to learn at a pace that he or she is comfortable with. So that's the model which they have followed. There's a lot of tutoring that happens at the back end, and a lot of technology enabled methods through which these lessons are delivered. Fairly powerful, actually. Quite a bit of money is spent by the Kedman group in building up the curriculum and content because the technology that is needed at the back end. So these are new and interesting experiments that are occurring, and I expect that there will be many more. There is also some new initiatives taken by some of the sector skill councils, media, logistics, and retail. 3 of them have embedded apprenticeship into regular degree courses. So if you are doing a regular degree courses, and I'm aware that about 650 children are doing these courses at the moment. It was started last year, where you would end up getting a regular degree course, but in the process, you would be picking up something relating to logistics, which is directly related to a job. and you're learning on the soft floor too, even as you're learning the theory of it in the classroom. So both of them happening back to back, a model which I feel in the long term will be extremely, extremely useful because it not only makes you realize the value of a particular job in terms of theory, but also actually makes you understand how to do it. And that's critically important if the economy is to go forward. So that's one interesting model which is there. We are, of course, all aware of TISH having a lot of BVOC courses, and they are very good. So therefore, skilling is getting mainstreamed into education. The new policy of the government, the draft policy at the moment, also talks quite a bit about bringing in vocational education in a bigger way into the education mainstream. So I think that's something towards which all of us have to work. One big challenge would be working on what we call the National Skill Qualification Framework, NSQF. It is the level through which various competencies are defined, and it goes from level 1 up to level 10. Level 10 would be a PhD, level 1 is class 9. So that's the kind of classification that was made. And competencies are defined at each of these levels. Now, the challenge, I think, is that when we do skilling and when we do have a regular academics, how does one move horizontally? And I think that's a work which is still incomplete in terms of how much credit should one get having done, let's say, a short-term course of 3 months, or somebody has done an ITI course for 2 years, or somebody has done a 3-year course in a polytechnic. So how would you compare these three? Even if they are in level 4, each of them, the time that you would have spent in polytechnic or ITI is much more, and therefore the knowledge that you have imbibed is much more. And how does one therefore create a credit system which is fair, equitable, and gives the right signal to the academic side also that transition becomes possible? I think that's one challenge which remains, and more work is needed out there. Once we have that, and also get our assessment right, because one of the complaints with skills often is the problem with assessment, and often the assessment do not really show the quality of skilling. And we are aware that there are problems there. A lot of them have been fixed too, because we do a lot of data analytics, and we realize that there are certain sectors where the problem seems to be more than other sectors. A lot of it is being moved into tech platforms to ensure that human element is minimized, and therefore any chance of corruption or favoritism that can reduce. So those kind of efforts are ongoing. But I do feel that this skilling, by improving this regulatory framework and making that connect, which is currently lacking with regular academics, and encouraging people therefore to move vertically as well as horizontally, is the way for the future. In addition to that, a lot of skills that are emerging, which we call the future of skills, is linked very deeply to what NSDC does, to the NASCOM and the ITS Sector Skill Council. And that's also currently embedded into some of the school education initiative taken by Manav Rasna University. So these were a few points which I wanted to share. And I would be very keen to work with educational institutions in taking many of the initiatives that we do forward together with you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much, sir. But before you leave, there are lots of questions which are poured on YouTube. I may not be able to take up all, but there are something which is really relevant. Sanjeev Soni, he or she asked that what are the most important 21st century skills that each school needs to plan to impart the children, to impart the skills to the children?
So in my view, one of the most important skill that one must have is the soft skill. I believe that there are actually studies that shows that almost 1/3 of your wages in future are explained by soft skills. And that's something on which India has been lacking, because we don't really teach that enough. So for example, leadership skills, the ability to communicate, the ability to be assertive when it is needed. These are not taught in a very systematic way. And I think these are important, because when you get into a workplace, there would be various kinds of interactions. People generally tend to stay away from conflict, but conflicts are important. If you really want to grow as a society, you must be able to have conflicts, but still be respectful. Conflict of ideas, not conflict of individuals. You must have conflict of ideas. And that's what helps you to get to better. Also challenging yourself, that you must step out of your comfort zone, but it should not be so far away that you're demoralized. So how do you get that balance right? So these things come when you get into the soft skilling part. This currently is lacking in schools and is important, I believe.
One more question is, what are the skills that are needed in response to COVID-19, particularly for the entrepreneurs and the startups? And how can people connect with NSDC Sectoral Skill Council so that they can work together with them?
So for entrepreneurs and startups, I think this is an interesting time because I'm aware that there are lots of funds at the moment looking for good startups who can think for the future, being aware of what we are going through currently, because I think there would be changes which will be long term, and there would, all of us agree that there will be impact of how we behave, how we operate in future. So for startup, I think it's a good time. You would need to perhaps look for an idea that is suitable, and there will be plenty of people perhaps willing to finance you. So far as connecting with sector skill councils, or for that matter, NSDC is concerned, we have our website, which is very elaborate and detailed. You can send an email. We'll be happy to respond to you. The sector skill councils are also having their own website. So if you just type the sector skill council and which sector skill council are you looking for, you get them. Or if you're not sure, then you can get the list of all of it in our website. And there's a link provided through which you can jump to the other.
Right, sir. In fact, Dr. Blossom Kocher, who is representing the Beauty and Wellness Sector Skills Council, she would be one of the speakers in our event right now after the Excellence Awards. And there are so many other questions, but I understand from your office that you have a ministry, important meeting at the ministry. So I will, thank you so much from the audience and other people who have joined us from the organization side. Thank you for joining us and making our day.
Thank you, Sunanda. Thank you so much. And wish you all the best.
Thank you. Okay, so not taking much of your time, what we are going to do right now is we are going to start with the Excellence Awards. And these Excellence Awards are something that we are going to do right